We've seen a couple of very high-profile cases in the last few months. One at Stanford University, one at UCLA, where Jewish women were in the process of being interviewed for a campus position and questioned in a way that made them feel very uncomfortable, not necessarily as women, but as Jews. And this comes against a backdrop where it seems to be heightened concern about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism on college campuses. And Ariela, I know you do a lot of work with gender harassment on campuses. Do you see like an intersection here?
I do, because there's a larger cultural discussion about what role the institution has to play in making students feel safe on campus. Many women feel unsafe on campuses, and in some ways for good reason. When you look at the sexual assault and sexual harassment statistics, or there's a new film out called The Hunting Ground that is sort of documenting this problem. And we've done a lot of work to say that institutions have some role to play. There have been lawsuits, for example, against universities that hold recruiting parties where sex is expected and then rapes happen, and they have some accountability for that. We may see the same thing in the context of nationality-based or religion-based harassment, where it really depends how the institution responds. They have a certain obligation to make sure, on the one hand, that people have the right to express themselves and to free speech and to disagree over tough topics, including in the classroom. At the same time, they have a responsibility to make sure that nobody is sort of hounded out of activities, whether it's the student council or anything else, or feels hounded out, and that's where it gets dicey because of who they are.
I saw The Hunting Ground, and there is certainly an issue going on college campuses. I don't necessarily believe that it is any different than it was 20 years ago. I just think this generation of young women have been taught that speak up, and it's okay to say, he did something to me. Whereas before, you just sort of like went in your room and didn't say a thing, and you just said, I'm not going to tell anyone, I'm going to pretend this never happened.
But I think there is a distinction to be made between anti-Semitism and sexual assault.
Absolutely.
And and I think, to me, what seems so problematic about some of the claims about anti-Semitism that have been made on campus, in particular these cases where Jewish student leaders have been asked about their opinion about particular issues, as if it's a fait accompli that if you're Jewish, you must have a particular kind of opinion. It's really a question about how we understand identity and the assumptions that are made about the relationship between identity and politics. And obviously, campuses are places where we want, as you were saying, Ariela, we want there to be lively debate. We want there to be provocative questions that are answered. We want people to feel triggered sometimes. On the other hand, we don't want people to be labeled. We want people to have the freedom to really express and explore and change their opinions, and not to have there be an assumption that because you come from a certain community, we know in advance what your opinion is going to be, and we're going to make that assumption. And that's, to me, where it's really dangerous.
I understand that, but we in the Jewish community, I think, sometimes invite that because we have equated love of Israel and particular support of the current government of Israel as a way of defining
the whole Jewish community, but vocal elements of it.
Vocal element and very well-funded elements who are looking to find these problems on college campuses. I was really struck because a survey came out in February from Trinity College that claimed that 54% of the students who responded to this survey had experienced or witnessed anti-Semitism, and that struck me as really high. So I actually did what it appears no other journalist did, and everybody was quoting this survey from the New York Times on down. Actually read it, there were two scholars who conducted the survey, which it turns out cast a lot of doubt on that number. Not that it is incorrect, but it is wildly incomplete. Anti-Semitism wasn't defined. It was experienced or witnessed, so there could have been one slur that was heard by 10 people, and then suddenly that seems like it's 10 incidents. Women were more likely to say that they had seen or experienced this than men did. And then that raises up questions about sensitivities and vulnerabilities. Are they targeted more? Are they feeling it more? And then I just went and checked with the ADL to find out what their figures were, and we can assume that they don't understate anti-Semitism or they'd be out of business. And it turns out that the 3 of the last 4 years have seen the lowest rates of reported anti-Semitic actions on college campuses since 1999.
Well, how are those actions defined? So, what was their methodology?
You know what? I don't know, but it's their methodology over time.
Right.
So
is number the most important thing, though? I mean, I guess that's my question. You know, we have in the arena of campus harassment, there was this one event where in Oklahoma, a frat, they were chanting these racist songs. And I don't care if it happened even just the once. It's pretty disturbing, right? So to some extent, when it comes to harassment, I mean, numbers are important, of course, but a few key events can reverberate, and perhaps that's what we're seeing, is that even if it's just a few events where students feel quite vulnerable, or, you know, that is something that I would still take seriously, even if it's not happening weekly on thousands of campuses.